there's another little section that you wrote about, which I also found interesting, which was all about ethics and safety, safety, security, ethics. This isn't specific to reinforcement learning, but it's certainly relevant. The more data is out there, the more we kind of hand over to autonomy or autonomous things, or automation, I should say. The more risks there are, the more security threat we create. What is your stance about ethics, and how do you manage that with something like reinforcement learning or just machine learning in general?
Well, that's a really massive question. So I mean, yeah, in 3 words. So I mean, ethics as a subject is a massive subject. I'm just about to read a new book. I've forgotten her name now, but there's a lady. It's another O'Reilly book. A lady who's just written it, and it's about the ethics of machine learning, and it has some sort of practical tips on how to do this technically. I think largely though, ethics is a much bigger than the engineering industry. It should be involved like throughout public life, a government level, a local level, but I mean, the more we use technology, the more we learn about it, and the more dependent we become on it. And I'm not entirely sure I'm going with this, to be honest. I think it's a really hard question to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, in a way, it's kind of like we've invented fire. And of course, as we all know, fire can be used for good or for evil. Fire itself is not evil. It's just how you use it, right? You can cook your food, or you can burn down someone's house, and we've come to a place where we've kind of got that under control as a society. And I guess we need to get there with data.
Yeah, but it's very different in the sense that like when you're using fire, you can probably hurt yourself, but it's unlikely to hurt other people. But when we're building things like the software that we're building, it's very unlikely to hurt you, but it's quite likely to hurt somebody else. So it takes an incredible amount of distance to be able to actually ask the question, is what I'm doing right now, is that going to affect anybody? Because most of the time, 99.9% of the time, you just don't even think about it. It's not like that you're not a moral person, or you don't have ethics or something. It's just you don't even think about what you're doing. It could be taken that way. So I think the first thing that we can maybe do is just as individuals just consider it a little bit more. I've often heard that engineering is not a regulated, or not a fully regulated industry. So people who practice medicine, they have to take the Hippocratic Oath, and they have legal obligations to basically do good and not bad. That doesn't exist in engineering. And I've heard of many people sort of talk about the idea of implementing something like this, but I feel like that's not really the right approach either. But there needs to be some sort of something in that direction, some common agreement about the things that are right and the things that are wrong. And in fact, that's what governments are for. That's what laws are for. That's what regulations are for. So maybe the answer is just let the politicians and the lawyers do their jobs, and we'll be all right in the end.
It is definitely the mark of a new kind of emerging power in an industry. I think 25 years ago, you could talk about the finance industry, the pharmaceutical industry.
Right. Yeah.
The tech industry was still this kind of cute, nerdy, thing on the side that their TVs better. And I think in the last 15 years, especially 10, 15 years, it's really started to take a whole new role in society. And
yeah, exactly.
Really cool to start thinking about those things. I agree.
Yeah. So you did mention safety though as well, and that is a little bit more tangible and a bit more solvable. And reinforcement learning in particular sort of attempts to tackle that head on. There are for certain tasks, it's really important to sort of mathematically prove that if we apply a constraint, if we say that you cannot go outside of these bounds, that you can prove that the algorithm that is derived from that reinforcement learning algorithm also conforms to those constraints. And so there are algorithms that exist out there that are provably safe. The problem with them is that they often add so many constraints that actually it makes the problem harder to solve. So a lot of other frameworks that have been suggested kind of sit on the outside of the model, and effectively act a bit like a watchdog. They kind of watch to see what is happening, and if something is ever about to be unsafe, then it's just like a, just chops off the action, so it can't be unsafe. So they're kind of generally the two approaches that researchers have taken to apply safety constraints. But it's eminently doable. Yep.
That's very fascinating. Actually, I remember when maybe a few years ago when they were talking about training autonomous vehicles here in Amsterdam. And the first thing I thought of were just, dozens of bikers getting knocked into canals and things like that. And ultimately, I actually don't know if they ever did that testing, but ultimately this would be a very a clear example of that, since if you have been in Amsterdam, you can see, well, under normal times, you see that there doesn't even seem to be any rhyme or reason to the bikes. There's no order. They just fill in the space like liquid. So, it's probably an especially challenging problem for machine learning and other types of data science. So.
Yeah, definitely. And you can only be provably correct if you have the like correct data in the first place. Like part of the problem and part of the reason why the sort of the provably safe algorithms don't work particularly well is because it's impossible to kind of attain the level of detail in the data that is required to be safe in the first place. Yeah. So there has to be a compromise somewhere.